the battle, you see my victory. When all I see is the mountain, you see a mountain move. And as I walk through the shadow, your love surrounds me. There's nothing to fear now, for I am safe with you. So when I fight on my knees with my hands lifted high. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. Every fear I lay at your feet. I'll sing through the night. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. And if you are for me, who can be against me? Oh Jesus, there's nothing impossible for you. When all I see are the ashes, you see the beauty. When all I see is a cross, God, you see the empty tomb. So when I fight on my knees with my hands lifted high. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. Every fear I lay at your feet. I sing through the night. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. An almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. We shine in the shadows, win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. Almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. Shine in the shadows, win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. So when I fight, I'll fight on my knees with my hands lifted high. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. Every fear I lay at your feet. I sing through the night. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. Oh God, the battle belongs to you.
Restore, welcome. I am really excited to be with you today, wherever you're at, whenever you watch this. I'm not sure if you're at home, if you're at work, maybe you're driving from somewhere and you decided to listen to today's message, I want to talk to you. I want to just have a conversation with you today, and I hope that you can hear me. Hope that you just hear my heart, hear the heart of God today. And we're in a new series, second week of a 3-week series. This Daniel's Window. We're talking about prayer. And Daniel was a pretty amazing guy. He was a pretty amazing person. So I want to talk about that today. How many of us would be willing to raise their hand and say that you're one of those people? That you're one of the people that has, for whatever reason, maybe you saw pictures of yourself, maybe you just realized you want to get healthy, you decide to do a workout. You decide I'm going to get on the treadmill, I'm going to get on the elliptical, I'm going to get on the bike, whatever it is. A lot of times we see this at the beginning of the year, right? Beginning of the year, you want to get healthy, right? So I'm going to commit to this. I'm going to work out every single day. And I'm one of those people. So I'm one of those people that I decided beginning of the pandemic that I was going to start to run again. And so I started this Couch to 5K app on my phone, and it starts you off really easy, right? You're just walking, and then after a couple of weeks, then they get you running, and you're running almost a 5K midway through it, and it'll have you run for like 5 minutes, and then walk for 3, and run for 5, and walk for 3. And I think we all have this really great intention of doing this, right? This really great intention of doing all this stuff, and then you hurt your foot. For those of us that are parents, maybe our kids get sick, and they were up all night, and we get up with them when our alarm goes off to wake us up, to get us up to do our workout, our daily workout. And we're like, oh, I'm just exhausted. Tonight I'll do it. I'll put the kids to bed, we'll get them down, and then I'll do it. Before you know it, this idea of doing this really great intention, next thing you know, it's stopped. And if you're like me, you're sitting on the couch playing old school Nintendo with a bag of Doritos. We have this really great intention. I have this really great intention of doing this. Right? We start something up with the best of intentions, kind of falls off. And then I get discouraged. I get discouraged because something that I had really wanted to do with all the good intentions, I'm no longer doing it, and then I get really sad, and then I just stop completely for a long time. One thing I love about Daniel is Daniel has built this rhythm in his life. 3 times a day he prays. We hear this idea in Scripture of praying without ceasing. He's praying this continual moment, but Daniel has this idea that he goes into his room 3 times a day with a window facing Jerusalem, and he prays. So he has built this rhythm in his life, and through all the things he's been through, becoming a slave and being captured and coming to a foreign country, he has kept this rhythm in his life. See, it didn't just start up one day in Daniel chapter 6. This wasn't this, I'm going to pray 3 times a day. It just starts up. This is something that Daniel has built. This is the steps that Daniel has built in his life for a long time. Maybe he missed a day here and there. Maybe he missed a time here and there. Maybe he didn't do it every single day, but Daniel had this rhythm that even if he got off schedule for a while, for a day, for a moment, he got back on it. He kept going. I want to read with you Daniel chapter 6, And it's a familiar story for a lot of us, but I think maybe if you're like me and we read this again today, maybe you'll find something else that you not saw before. That's my prayer. My prayer is as we read this together, as I read this to you, that we would listen and ask God to reveal something that we never saw before. Let's read. Daniel chapter 6. It says this: Darius the Mede decided to divide the kingdom into 120 provinces, and he appointed a high officer to rule over every province. The king also chose Daniel and 2 others as administrators to supervise the high officers and protect the king's interests. Daniel soon proved himself more capable than all the other administrators and high officers. Because of Daniel's great ability, the king made plans to place him over the entire empire. Then the other administrators and high officers began searching for some fault in the way Daniel was handling government affairs, but they couldn't find anything to criticize or condemn. He was faithful, always responsible, and completely trustworthy. So they concluded our only chance of finding grounds for accusing Daniel will be in connection with the rules of his religion. So the administrators and high officers went to the king and said, "Long live King Darius! We are in all agreement, and we administrators, officials, high officers, advisors, and governors, that the king should make a law that was strictly enforced. Give orders that for the next 30 days, any person who prays to anyone, divine or human, except to you, your majesty, will be thrown into the den of lions. And now, your majesty, issue and sign this law so it cannot be changed. An official law of the Medes and Persians cannot be revoked." So King Darius signed the law, but when Daniel learned that the law had been signed, he went home and knelt down as usual in his upstairs room with his window open towards Jerusalem, and he prayed 3 times a day, just as he's always done, giving thanks to his God. Then the officials went together to Daniel's house and found him praying and asking for God's help. So they went straight to the king, reminding him about his law. "Did you not sign a law that for the next 30 days, any person who prays to anyone divine or human except to you, your majesty, will be thrown into the den of lions?" "Yes," the king replied, "that decision stands. It is an official law of the Medes and Persians and cannot be revoked." And they told the king, "That man Daniel, one of the captives from Judah, is ignoring you and your law. He still prays to his God 3 times a day." Hearing this, the king was deeply troubled, and he tried to think of a way to save Daniel. He spent the rest of the day looking for a way to get Daniel out of this predicament. In the evening, the men went together to the king and said, "Your majesty, you know that according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, that no law that the king signs can be changed." So at last the king gave orders for Daniel to be arrested and thrown into the den of lions. The king said to him, "May your God, whom you serve faithfully, rescue you." A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den. The king sealed the stone with his royal seal and the seal of his nobles, so no one could rescue Daniel. Then the king returned to his palace. He spent the night fasting. He refused his usual entertainment, and he couldn't sleep at all that night. Very early the next morning, the king got up and he hurried out to the lion's den. When he got there, he called out in anguish, "Daniel, servant of the living God, was your God, whom you serve faithfully, able to rescue you from the lions?" Daniel answered, "Long live the king. My God sent his angel to shut the lions' mouths so they would not hurt me, for I have been found innocent in his sight. And I have not wronged you, your majesty." The king was overjoyed and ordered that Daniel be lifted out of the den. Not a scratch was found on him, for he had trusted in his God. And the king gave orders to arrest the men who had maliciously accused Daniel, thrown them to the lions, and along with all their wives and children. The lions leapt on them and tore them apart before they even hit the floor of the den. Wow. as you see in the story, it refers back to a moment in Daniel's life. See, Daniel had been taken from his country and brought to a new country. Taken from his homeland, taken from everything he knew, and brought to a new country. He was a slave. He didn't have a choice. He just had to come and do this. He was taken captive. See, it would have been really easy. It would have been really easy for Daniel just to fit in. See, Daniel and there's a couple other men in these stories of Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and there's others that Daniel says, and he sets themselves apart from this get-go. They have a chance to eat from the king's table, they choose not to. They set themselves apart and they show themselves worthy of the king. See, Daniel, he could have just fit in. He could have said, you know what? If my God was so amazing, so powerful, so strong, he wouldn't have let me be taken captive. But he doesn't do that. See, honestly, from the beginning, Daniel continually steps from darkness to light. Because consistently, he sets himself apart from the crowd. See, God in him sets himself apart. See, he doesn't abandon what God has called him to do. He chooses to continue to serve God, even in a country, in a community, in a place that is far from where he was at. But see, the interesting thing in all of this, every time that Daniel steps out in faith, steps out in really against the rules and the regulations of the new country he's in, he doesn't do it in utter defiance. He doesn't do it with this angry tone. He doesn't do it with this hate in his heart. He just says, this is what God's called me to do. I've got to do it. See, Daniel, he steps out of darkness and into light. See, he could bring shame towards those around him, but he steps into the moments of tension and he steps into these moments of difficulty. See, he doesn't know. He does this knowing that he could be in trouble. But see, Daniel does this with full knowledge of who God is and what he can do. See, he doesn't step out of darkness and into light alone. He steps into the light knowing who God is. In the story of Daniel, we see that he's built this reputation, these rituals in his life, and the king is not the only one that knows about these rituals and this reputation of this man that has the faith, that's strong and ambitious, and that he's willing to pray 3 times a day. He's willing to go up to his room, open this window, pray towards Jerusalem. See, it's well known enough that his greatest enemies are going to use it against him. The qualities that he's built up have garnered so much hate by those around him. See, God has blessed him so amazingly that he is now almost, it sounds as if in this moment he's like the second in command of all of the country. Like that's crazy that this foreigner, this person that came in as this slave is now not only head over all of these new rulers, these new leaders. Like he was one of the top people, but now he's like the top of the top over everybody. See, Daniel excels in everything he does. No matter where he's placed, God blesses him in that space. And so he's hated. See, he's hated to the point that those who are under his authority are going out of their ways to get him. See, when you and I follow what God has for us, others might hate you. When we step out in faith and step into what God has called us to do, there is a chance that others around you might not like that. They might not like that you are stepping into light. I look at the life of Jesus, fast forwarding to his life and how Jesus was hated for a lot of different reasons. He was hated because he spoke the truth. He was hated because he set people free. He was hated because he was trying to set people free from this oppressive way of life. You see, the leaders and the rulers of Jesus' time, it was their job to care for the people around them, yet they continually oppressed them. They put undue pressure and undue weight on them to carry, and it was so unfair. It wasn't rules and regulations that God had provided for them. It was extra stuff, extra weight. You see, these Pharisees and Sadducees, they would pray in the streets. They would pray with everybody looking at them. Look at how great I am. Look at how amazing I am, as they would walk through the streets, as they would pray, as they would make these loud, boisterous claims. See, Daniel's not that way. We read in the story that Daniel doesn't go on the streets and try to pray and pray loud and pray with this boldness so everybody sees him. No, see, Daniel goes in secret. Daniel goes where it's just him and God facing Jerusalem with the window open to pray on behalf of those around him. To thank God for how good he is to Daniel. See, oftentimes I hear people tell me, if I could just go to school and be a pastor, boy, my spiritual life would be a piece of cake. I'd have all this time to pray. I'd have all this time to read scripture. I'd have all this time to do good to those around me. Daniel was not in that position. See, Daniel worked for the government. Daniel had a government job, working for the king, and yet he still impacted those around him. He still was set apart even in his government job. Even in the circumstances that were not great, Daniel lived and worked where he was. He didn't allow the circumstances of his life to dictate how his faith was lived out. His faith in God actually propelled him in the position he was at. See, what sets you apart from those around you? I've watched different videos and clips and shows of basketball players remembering Kobe Bryant. Now, Kobe Bryant passed away a few years back, and players have come out and shared stories about the work ethic and who he was as a teammate and who he was as a competitor. And there was one or two stories that stuck out to me, and one of them was this. Season had ended, and a bunch of these players had were going to be going overseas to be playing, I think it was in either the Olympics or Olympic trials. And so one player in particular said, I wanted to make sure I got up really early. So I got up like at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I wanted to go down and eat breakfast and then hit the gym to get a workout in before anyone else was up. And so he said, I got up, I got ready, and I went downstairs. And then when I got down there, I saw Kobe sitting there eating breakfast. And he said, when I saw him eating breakfast, I came around the table and he already had ice packs on his knees, and he was just soaked in sweat. And I asked Bryant what he was doing there, and he said, I just got finished with my first workout. First workout? See, Kobe was one of the best players in the game, and he had just come off the week before playing and going deep into the playoffs and losing. And here he was getting ready for the next moment. Another player told a story about how he went in the gym one morning to work out. And when he went in there, Kobe was already shooting baskets and running some drills. And the guy talked about how I was in there. I put up a bunch of shots. I was in there for a little over an hour. I sat on the bench to exhausted, ready to take my break and get changed and go home. And he said, I sat there and I watched Kobe continue to practice. And he said the things that he did weren't just shots to shoot, right? He wasn't just throwing up shots. He wasn't just doing just 100 free throws, or he wasn't just shooting just from the three-point line. He said he was actually doing in-game movements. He was doing these fallback jumpers, things that I saw him do in the game. He did this repeatedly for the next hour and a half. And then he came off the court. And as the player looked at Kobe Bryant and said, "What's up? Why did you, an extra hour and a half? What's up with that?" And he looked at him and said, "I wanted you to know no matter how hard you work, I'm going to work harder." See, it's not a Kobe Bryant love fest here in this moment, but I share this with you because, see, Kobe and other athletes, they practice these movements. They practice these shots. They practice these off-balance shots, off-balance things that they know they're going to do in a game, right? NFL players, quarterbacks will do these drills simulating game action because they want to just build up this muscle memory so that in the heat of a game, in the heat of the moment of the game, that at any time that when they need to pull that shot or they need to pull that pass out of their arsenal, that is there. That it's muscle memory. That when they provide that moment, that it's just there, that they don't have to even think about it, that it's just a reaction to the play, to the defense. See, I wonder what happens when you and I are under pressure. See, what are you doing now to build the muscle memory in our prayer lives? See, I love the dedication that Danny shows for his life. See, Daniel has embraced prayer in his life. See, he's embraced it to the part where it's literally become part of him. See, he knows where his power comes from. See, it's like when we go to the doctor and they hit your elbow or your knee and your leg just kicks out automatically. It's this reflex. See, Daniel was building this prayer reflex in his life so that when this moment came when this law was passed that says you cannot pray. See, rather than go and be angry and confront the king and lash out at him. See, Daniel had the prayer rhythm for his life, no matter the circumstances. See, he doesn't change, he doesn't waver. But he knows it's going to cost him. See, at some point, the invoice, the bill is going to come, and he's going to have to pay. Daniel's caught, tossed in the lion's den. But something catches my eye, and it's in the NIV translation as I was reading through this passage. The king says something that at first I didn't really even catch, and I kind of just passed it over. But he says something, and this is from the NIV. It says this: "May your God whom you serve continually, rescue you. Whom you serve continually. You see, Daniel has built this rhythm. Daniel has built this reputation that when the hard times come, he goes to pray. That when the good times are there, he goes to pray. That in the moments that he needs to have a solution to a hard problem, he goes to pray. His first response to this law against his faith, he goes to pray, knowing it could cost him everything. So what is your response when injustice strikes? What happens when our faith is under attack? What happens when our faith or a moment of our lives is kind of putting this pressure on us? See, when Daniel was faced with the choice to continue to pray, he prays to a God who has saved him before. There was not really a choice. It's because it's become part of his character. It's become part of who he is. Charles Ying shared this. Our choices become our habits. Our habits become our characters. And as a Roman poet, Heraclitus, said 500 years before Christ walked the earth, character is destiny. They say it takes 21 days to develop a habit. There are times in my life when if I prayed a certain way, I would force God's hand to doing what I wanted. See, I thought that if I prayed hard enough, if I fasted great enough, that I would force God's hand into doing for me what I needed. What if I fasted for 21? What if I prayed for 21 days? But what if my prayers for 21 days forced my hand? See, Daniel had created a rhythm for his prayer, and so when it mattered most, when his life was on the line, when pressure was there, rather than swinging towards sin, he found his prayer time. See, I wonder what could happen if you and I develop a stronger prayer rhythm in our lives. See, it takes 21 days to develop a habit. When I was coaching wrestling at the beginning of the season, we would all look at each other and say, we've got a room full of kids here. If we can get them through 21 days, we've got them. If we can just get them through these first 21 days of the season, they're going to be with us the rest of the season. So we knew that to encourage them, be there for them, walk with them. What would happen if you and I prayed for 21 days? Not because it's going to force God's hand to do something for us, but because it will change the position of our hands. Asking God for something, asking God to give us things. But what if we prayed to release stuff from our lives? What if we prayed that God would do something in us and in our community? What if for the next 21 days, you and I prayed together and we journaled together? Now, I might miss a day here and there. I'm going to try my hardest to pray for the next 21 days. And I'm going to pray for Marshalltown. I'm going to pray for my enemies. I'm going to pray for those that I don't really like that much. I'm going to journal. I'm going to see what God pulls from my hands. I want to see what God takes out of my heart, what He removes from my soul. Who can you pray for? Who will God ask you to intercede for over these next 21 days? What will people say about our lives? How do they describe your life? Would they say that you continually serve God? Do we serve God when things are good? But what happens in times of trouble? What is our first reaction? See, Daniel's first reaction was to pray. Was to thank God and intercede on others' behalves. See, I wish that I had the dedication to work out like I want to always stick with it. But I'm going to try. I'm going to try and pray for 21 days. I'm going to try to pray for every single day and journal it down for 20. And what would happen? Could we start a new movement in our own souls? Now, you may miss a day, but get back on it. You may miss a day and say, Pastor Ryan, I missed a day. I got 21 of 20. I got 18 of 20, but here's the deal. You prayed. You prayed for 21 days. And I love Daniel's passion. So I want to encourage you. Will you join me in praying for 21 days? You can message us in the chat here. You can shoot me a message on Facebook and say, Pastor Ryan, I want to pray with you. I want to take this challenge on and pray for 21 days and journal with you as we go and keep the receipts as we talked about at the beginning of the year. In Daniel chapter 9, we see part of Daniel's prayer life as he intercedes on the behalf of the sin for those around him. It's not his, yet he takes it on. It's not his to take on, but he does it anyways. He says, God, will you please forgive us our sins? So, will you intercede on the behalf of somebody else? Will you pray for God to do something awesome for the next 21 days? I cannot wait to see what God does. Again, this isn't about being perfect. This is about our intentions. This is about creating a new habit in our lives. That as Daniel just has this consistency in his life, and the power of the consistency that he has is shown by the mouths of the lions being shut, is shown by the king transforming his heart and his mind. So will you join me in praying for the next 21 days and seeing the power of the consistency of prayer?